Hey everybody, welcome to Meet the Prof. My name is Shane Hartley and I am on staff with Faculty Commons, a crew ministry to faculty, staff, and grad students. And we are so glad you're here. Our goal for Meet the Prof is to encourage Christ-centered conversations on the college campus. And we do that by interviewing Christian professors and using questions we get from college students. So you're going to get to hear now from Dr. Kate Fogarty-Read. Dr. Read is an associate professor in family, youth, and community sciences at the University of Florida. Her research entails examining predictors of youth thriving as well as risk or problematic behaviors. And last year, Kate received the North American Colleges and Teachers of Agriculture Educator Award. So Kate, it's so good to have you here. Welcome to Meet the Prof.
Thank you, Shane. I'm happy to be here.
Well, I loved learning on meettheprof.com that you came to Christ in grad school. So how did God get your attention when you were in grad school?
First of all, I was raised in more of an agnostic, possibly atheist household, and I moved from New York down to Georgia to go to graduate school. In the time, I served as a teaching assistant, what commonly most graduate students do. And the first day of a class, I introduced myself to the students. The professor was largely absent that semester. And one of the students in the back of the room, I saw her sort of sitting and looking at me quizzically. In my New York mode of thinking, the first thought that came to my mind is, what is she looking at? And then something told me, she just wants to get to know you better, even though she was sitting in the back of the classroom, kind of looking at me quizzically. Later, when I talked with her, and this was after, coming to Christ, she said, that's what I was wondering. Was this somebody who is open to knowing Jesus?
She was a Christian.
Yes, yes.
Wow.
And I only recently thought of this, but she was an athlete at the time, and I was a tutor for athletes. So I ended up tutoring her for this class that I TA'd to get her ready for exams because she was having difficulty with the exams. But the exams were filled with very tricky questions. And what I realized is what, made her really stand out is I remember a semester later running into a student who said, and I remember the student because they'd gotten like a perfect score on one of the hardest exams. And the student said, oh, we
Wow.
all cheated. And so what made a difference is that this student who was able and available did not cheat and
Yeah,
appropriately studied. So she also stood out as an example to me.
definitely. I'm surprised that student admitted that to you. I guess they had
Well,
already
that the
finished your
semester
class.
was over and I was just a TA, so I really didn't have any say.
Wow, but it stood out that the Christian student didn't. How common do you think cheating is? Is there any way of telling?
It's very hard to tell. And right now we have artificial intelligence to help out with things. I mean, I just try to, in my classes, set it up so that students are engaged with the material, that they don't really need to cheat. Like we've kind of done away with exams, or at least in the class I teach in human services, so that you're expecting more original student work, especially with reflection papers and at grad level, you don't expect it either, but sometimes it does happen but even in academia, even faculty can cheat. I mean, there are times I received manuscripts and you could tell that the beginning part was generated by artificial intelligence. And in
Really?
that case, I would let the editors know and move on with that.
Yeah. I've heard other faculty talk about how faith is involved even in research because you're reading other academics and you have to place faith in them to some degree. What they're
Yeah,
saying was the work was done with integrity, and that's
exactly.
interesting. How long have you taught now, Kate, at the university level?
At the University of Florida, I've taught for 21 years.
Is that right?
A
That's
few
great.
years as a graduate student, I taught independently some courses for the department, and this was at the
Okay.
University of Georgia.
Okay. The Bulldogs.
Yeah, I know. I went from Bulldog to Gator.
So 21 years there in Gainesville. How has your campus changed in that time? And how more specifically have you seen students change over time?
Well, I think there's been a lot of growth. About 10 years ago, we actually had a really amazing president come in, Kent Fox, and he rose the standard. He increased it in terms of faculty productivity expectations as well as students. So things have changed a lot, and I'm actually grateful. At first, I was a little scared of the changes and thought, "Oh, can I muster? Can I, measure up?" But
Yeah. Change can be hard in anything.
It was a really good thing for me and my career, but also the students, it's very hard to get in. So even just a couple of weeks ago when I was on my way back from a mission trip to Italy and we were talking about University of Florida, somebody out of the blue comes up to me and says, "Oh, could you tell me how to get my child in because they didn't make the cut?" I said, "I honestly can't tell you how that's done, even though I know someone
Yeah.
who works in admissions. It's just right now it's much more competitive and there could be like last year there was over 90,000 applicants for a freshman class that they could only
Is that
accept
right?
a little less than a
Wow.
third. So yeah.
My goodness, that is competitive then.
Yeah.
All right, so let's put a pin in that mission trip to Italy. I want to come back to that. But first I wanted to talk more about you and your journey. So after you came to Christ, how did you ever see God bring you through anything difficult? Do you have any stories of a time where God just really came through for you?
Well, I honestly look at how I got the position I received at the University of Florida. I met, generally we all know with faculty positions, usually they'll do Zoom interviews first as a screening tool, and then they'll narrow down to maybe two or three candidates to invite. But 21 years ago, it was three candidates. They figured out to invite. Maybe I spoke with someone at the phone on the most. There was hurricanes involved that delayed my interview, and the 2 people who interviewed with me were really excellent candidates. So I just know that God worked in amazing ways to like orchestrate everything. And I enjoyed the interview process so much. I said, "Oh, I can't wait to do this again." But it turns out I didn't have to.
You didn't have to do another interview. Wow.
But I watched him work, like, even when the position appeared in my inbox and email, the description just looked perfect. I went and I remember reading Ecclesiastes and, like, going to a local lake in Athens, Georgia, and praying over it and just thinking of "Cast your bread upon the waters, you don't know which will succeed or which will come back," and I just left it to the Lord, and then he provided.
Yes. Well, and that time was all the more pivotal as you look back now and see that he was leading you somewhere where you would be the next 21 years plus going now. So,
Yep.
what would you have said or thought if someone told you, you're starting here at University of Florida, you're going to be here also 21 years from now?
Well, some of the trials that I went through as a faculty member, I probably would have been very encouraged, especially, if I heard that from the Lord, because there've been a lot of times where I kind of wondered, will I last, here, or
Mm.
where does, you know, where does God want me to be or where to go?
Can you share about any of those that were difficult, those seasons?
I mean, people find it hard to believe. Sometimes not young faculty members have conflicts, and sometimes it's a result of, and I'm going to be perfectly honest, not staying in our lane. And I also think that as by nature, I'm a competitive person.
Are
Um,
you?
yeah, I mean, not sometimes. I like to cooperate, and I really actually like working in teams, and I feel better about it. But I realized that, at one point, this faculty member and I were not communicating well, and we got in a clash where I went out of my lane, and they let me know right away, this is not your lane. And then just a lot of things transpired, and it involved my department chair, it involved HR. It was very messy, and even a friend from church at the time who knew who was related to a dean and said, "Can I strings for you?" I'm like, "Please don't. No, no, no.
Wow.
God will take care of this." But I remember being very uncertain over a weekend of like, will I have a job when I get back? Because the
Mm.
other faculty member said, it's possible we could lose our jobs over this conflict. Now I look back and it's totally ridiculous and we, can laugh about it.
Good.
But at the time as a young assistant professor and just a couple years into the job, I thought, "Oh, wow, I really blew it." No
Yeah.
second chances for me.
So, what can you advise new faculty about staying in their lane? Where might they be tempted to get out of their lane? And how do you know if you've left your lane?
I mean, that's a tough call. I mean, looking back now, like, at the time, I was like, "Oh, I did nothing wrong." But as I've gotten more mature and I see, sometimes the source of other conflicts between faculty members, I realize, pride begets pride. And sometimes in that effort to get ahead and to move to the next level and to get tenure, we can see what someone else has and say, "Oh, I want that for myself," and not intentionally, cause harm to another. it's been done to me. I've done it to others. I tend to be now more of a team player, but there was a time where I was kind of like, well, I really need to prove myself. Yeah, I didn't ever think I would get here telling you this in an interview, but it is
Well, I'm with you. I'm in the same boat. I see that, especially this drive to prove myself. If I'm in a disagreement, my first response is often not to understand the other person, but it's they don't understand me and try to help them understand me. So I would imagine the stress, be it for new faculty, is extra. Could for some be their first position and a new location, maybe still getting furniture for their home, their apartment, and yeah, just a lot
actually,
of stress and change.
I'll be honest, I can't remember if this conflict happened. I think it happened after I had bought my first home. It was kind of funny. I think it happened pretty much around that time. So,
Yeah,
um, yeah, I'm
yeah,
trying to remember where I was at the time, when all of this, because there was at one point
yeah.
where, the interim or the person who replaced my chair was kind of like, go home for the day. Oh no, now come in. We want to resolve this conflict between the two of you. It was just,
Wow.
yeah.
So now you can remember where you were going from and to.
Yeah, I think it was my new home. And so, that's definitely a scary.
Well, I'm so glad that ended well.
It
The story has a good ending.
it really did.
So, Kate, I wanted to ask you, like, if you could imagine something, because I know you've shared online even that following Christ shapes how you teach and your love for students. What would you imagine your teaching and your research being like if Jesus had never rescued you? You had come to this point in your life and you were still a non-believer, maybe religious in some ways, but you just hadn't come to meet Jesus yet. Can you imagine any differences that would make?
Well, first of all, I don't know if I could have even gotten the job, but let's say I had gotten this position. I don't think I could have lasted in it. Uh, Most likely could have ended up with a nervous breakdown, to be honest. I mean, because I struggled so much, and I shared this actually recently in a faculty fellows group, that how much I struggled with imposter syndrome at times.
Mm,
And the truth is, when I had this conflict, the other faculty member had sort of appealed, through to my imposter syndrome by, stating some things about my worth to the department. And, it's silly now. It's like,
like
that's
jabs.
people do in yeah, yeah. But it's things like that that really, make it rough. And I could never have made it through the trials without Jesus, without his example, without God and prayer and other people praying for me too was very
Mm,
helpful.
hmm. So you may not have got the position, and if you had got the position, you may have had a nervous breakdown beforehand. That's what I relate with if Jesus hadn't rescued me.
Exactly.
Well, thanks. Thanks for
And I'm
imagining
still an
that and sharing that.
anxious person, and I'm not the most perfect in terms of
Really?
the spirit, working through, but at least I have the Holy Spirit, as a guide,
Yeah.
comforter, and peacemaker in my life.
Tim Keller used to describe our goal as being progress, that sanctification, becoming more like Christ, it is a process, and there's stumbling involved with that. That gives me a lot of hope and patience more with myself.
And in spite of my anxiety, I've noticed a theme that people have told me, just a few, but people that I've had impact on have said, I find you to be a calming presence. And I'm thinking, wow, well, considering the anxiety that I can face on a daily basis, that's very encouraging that, the Holy Spirit can work through this.
Yeah. That seems the exact opposite that God's working through. That's great. Well, can you tell us some about your relationship with students? I know that you have had ministry with grad students. What does that look like at UF? What's grad ministry like there, and what have you seen God do?
Well, I first of all have to give credit where it's due, and that would be Jan Whistler as well as John Chen, who's now at Baylor University. But they really I think, the backbone of the grad crew ministry that was started as part of Faculty Commons or the UF Christian faculty group. They,
John was on Meet the Prof. He
yeah,
was interviewed here.
awesome. Yeah, and I imagine he had a lot of he may not be one to, boast, so I'll
He
boast on
did. He didn't say anything about, yeah, I don't remember
but
anything about
he
grad
was
history.
instrumental in supporting, and Jan Whistler continues to do that. Jan actually started this wonderful group. So after this meeting, I'm going to run because what she did is help set graduate students more advanced with more recent new graduate students for discipling and mentoring. And I'm working with and mentoring a PhD student in another department. So we have a meeting together. But Jan helped start that whole group. But some of the things we also saw out of grad crew, which is one of the best things, is to watch somebody who is just like me, who actually invited me, even though I'm from outside of her department, to be on her PhD committee. And then in no time, she graduated with her doctorate and got a faculty position in another country. And she is now starting a grad crew, or really first a crew group, a crew student group with another
Yeah.
faculty member. And she started an entire faculty commons group at her
In
university.
another
So lots of
country. Can
prayers.
you say what country it is?
Yes, Chile, yes,
Nice.
and there is already crew there, but at this particular university is a new university, it's in the Patagonia region, and it's called ISA University, and so she and a bunch of other faculty members have already started meeting and looking at a grander story in Spanish.
Yeah. And you met her through your efforts with grad students in
Well,
ministry?
I think she ran into Nance maybe at a tabling event on
Nance
campus.
Kaufman?
Yeah, and that was it. Then history was made,
Great.
and then she came to a luncheon, and I met her there, and she and I had some similar interests. She has very unique background, and
Yeah.
so and what she works in is her area of expertise is pretty remarkable. Yeah.
How long did you work with her before she left the country?
I give Yan a lot more credit than me, but
Great.
I work with her more in, like, the professional capacity, so she still is coming back to Gainesville. In fact, we're gonna do a little work together,
Nice.
working towards turning her, her dissertation into a manuscript for publication and
Well,
things like that.
great.
She's every time she's here in Gainesville, she comes, with Nance and Howie and
Mm,
meets with them and Yan and gets a lot
mm.
of extra tools to help build her ministry. So it's clear that she's really giving God all the glory. Like, he gave her the position just the same as fast as I, I got the one at the University of Florida. She's gotten this one at Eisen, and she's just hitting the ground running with starting ministry there.
So I can imagine that some faculty now are wondering, Kate, how do you have time to mentor students on top of all that you're doing? It sounds like you're saying you're mentoring some students now, even in a spiritual way, not just academically. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that's one thing that, the church I first became part of, one of they were always big into Matthew 6:33, you know, seek first his kingdom and his righteousness and all this will be given. I just following that as um, you know, I mean, really more the church even stressed more, which I very much in agreement with, is, the Great Commission. But second to that was to seek first his kingdom, or maybe right alongside that. And I've always felt that every time I've done that, from the time I was in graduate school trying to work towards finish my thesis and then work towards a dissertation, I just found every time that I, gave a little, God gave so much more.
Did you ever have somebody mentor you spiritually?
Oh yes, I have Ants Kaufman to thank for a lot of spiritual mentoring. Because originally,
Yeah, Nance is
the church I
great.
was a part of didn't have very many faculty members, but there were a few that, we were friends and supported each other.
Mm.
But having Nance, I think with her expertise and then getting us all together in groups. So I've known her since about, I think, 2010, 2011, right around the time I put in my tenure packet. So it's been a really wonderful time, and she just believes in me and gave so much support to me and so much support to all these female faculty members, and everyone who works for the university can be a part of this group. So
That's great. So, do you have any examples of students who have come and told you they read your testimony on meettheprof.com? Do you have any examples of how God may have used that?
don't think so, but maybe that's partially my shortcoming because I can always take that information because sometimes I've struggled to even find it. Like I looked it myself up or found it, but why can I not put that, for example, in my email signature or something where students can also see that because I haven't really, I guess, publicized it or shared about it enough. So I honestly, I'm trying to think like if students have seen it or if anyone has ever commented on it. And I'm not sure that's happened yet.
Well, and I definitely wouldn't be too hard on yourself because students aren't searching the web to read things normally. And that's part of the reason we do the podcast, so that we're allowing you to say things on video that they might not read or others might not find it and read. So,
That's true. It is true. But I do remember this was years ago. I had a student who I didn't realize this. I was just had been open about my faith in class. And this one student was, I guess, taking another class that was really, I guess, challenging her faith. And her mother contacted me and thanked me and even offered, she said, "Oh, we've got this we've got this house on the beach in, some part of Florida that we're willing to offer you for a retreat anytime you need it." I don't think we ended up taking her up on the offer, but it
just
was just,
because you encouraged her daughter by saying you
yeah,
were a Christian.
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I'd forgotten about that because it had been some years because I think I'm a little more vocal now in my classes because Faculty Commons has given me opportunity and encouraged
Mm.
me to do so and to do so in ways that's responsible and kind.
We would probably be shocked to know in just an average classroom of students sitting there, how many of them are being prayed for every day, especially parents and grandparents. So that you definitely ministered to that, to the student, for her to even tell her mom, "Hey, my professor said this," for the mom to reach out to you. That's really encouraging.
Yeah, you even remind me of something else, which I still need to check on because last year, I think it was last year, we had a Common Call conference on campus, and part of our focus was on mission travels, and mission teams going out, mission trips. And I had made a couple posters, and one of the people who helped me with the poster was from another country, but it stated how, like, their grandmother had influenced their faith, even though they were between faiths, between Islam and Christianity, and received a lot of pressure and then had decided against. But we had a great faith building conversation as a result of that
Yeah.
poster and just thinking about, this young man's grandmother,
Yeah.
like desiring that for him. And so
So
I've
were
been
you
saying a annual prayer, but
standing?
I haven't gone over there to say, hey, print another poster and say hi.
Was this poster like an outreach? You were standing on the campus, available to talk to students spiritually? Help me picture. What
It
were you
wasn't
doing?
like that. It was more to inspire faculty and staff who went to a Common Call conference to look at missions, be it, within the US, because we have a lot of foreign students who are going on missions within the US and to New York, San Francisco. But we also have, mission trips that are, I think that Faculty Commons has had more of a focus of between Filter of Hope opportunities and new faculty commons groups and university settings across the world and the globe. That's
Yeah.
started too.
All right, Kate. Well, let's take that pen out from the earlier
Okay.
to talk about this Italy mission trip that you took. So, what did you do in Italy? Help me picture what kind of mission trip was that?
It was more of a building relationships trip, but it was still pretty amazing how kind and receptive Italians were. So I don't really want to go off camera, but if I can
That's
reach for
fine.
the tract, and of course it's going to look
Can you
backwards.
lift it a little higher?
Sure. But, we were given these, conoscere Dio personalmente. And it was just about, how to know God personally.
Great.
But what was, I think, unique. So Seal and Daryl Wilson have started these trips to Italy, and they've been doing this consistently for years, and since maybe several years before the pandemic. Maybe or they may have started even earlier than that. So I don't want to get the information wrong. But on those initial trips, they invited professors to talk to groups of students, as well as to connect with faculty at various universities who share the same specialization. So in October 2024, I had contacted the summer before that fall of 2024. I'd contacted Seal and Daryl and asked them about it. And they asked me, oh, why are you interested? And here's some guidance. Like maybe you can send some emails to people who work in your field at various universities. So it was sort of like fishing a little bit, but I
Yeah.
did hear back from a faculty member who does research similar to mine and my group at University of Padua and also at University of Palermo. And in the
I know
time that
Palermo.
we visited Palermo, we got connected with Impatto Italia, and they have an entire ministry and a church that was planted, I think, right after the pandemic in Palermo, led
Mm,
by JD or Jonathan Gilmore. And, he was legendary. He's
mm,
very connected in Palermo. And I think post-pandemic, they have lost the connection with the University of Palermo, but now the connection is very strong. Faculty Commons Ministry actually is going to be started. And this was also had nothing to do with me. It had everything to do with God because
mm,
one of his co-leaders in his church in Palermo went to high school with someone who is a University of Palermo professor now, currently in biology, and works with
mm.
doctoral students, one of whom wants to start a grad crew group there. All the outreach. So Jonathan Gilmore had us very busy, and I brought 3 UF graduates, one of whom is a faculty member with his PhD pharmacy in the College of Pharmacy, another who works for a nonprofit and does research in pharmacy. And this may lead into, and of course, another recent graduate of UF who is in the College of Education, but currently works on accessibility because we all have the American Disabilities Act and everyone's trying to align with that with our
Yep.
online presence on our campus. So there's just a whole lot going on. But the 3 that came with me, the UF team was just amazing. They were doing talks about science and faith, and I did talks more about my field, which is more about youth resilience and overcoming
Mm.
challenging times while growing up and
Wow.
moving in a positive direction.
What did you see God do during the mission trip?
I One of the things I think first of all, we really built relationships. I think it was impactful that I was able to come back and not just that, but reconnect with the people who they maybe thought, oh, we're not going to see her again. So the high school
One
administrator
time thing.
that we got to meet, but also, it was the other work going on and I'd connected with a faculty member at Unipa, and she and I continue working together on some research. That's been a really amazing time. And she set up a meeting with a group of professors. That was our first day there. And not only that, with us and the team of 4 from UF and the professors, we all got to kind of know each other and connect. It was really
Bet.
amazing time. Seal and Daryl were there, and someone's like, "Well, you're not faculty members. What are you doing here?" And then they shared their role in crew, and they shared what they did. And no
Good.
one was, like, questioning and going, ulterior motives. It was so open and so welcoming,
Oh.
and so we forged relationships, but also at the same
Mhm.
time, the best part about it, and I forget, was that students came with us from Agape Italia, so that was basically crew in Italy. A whole
Oh.
group came with us, and the cool thing is that the young faculty members banded up with them and they went to campus and they just reached out and met people. And then they had a culminating event later on after we left with all the students they had met and reached out to. It was
Yeah.
neat to work in partnership. We still have some things to work on to get create even more synergy, but it was probably
Yeah.
one of the best synergy of both faculty and students working together because one of the master's students in the group created a talk and it was high quality. It was just as, a PhD could create this talk. It was that high quality,
Wow.
so
Yeah.
meaningful. Really, it was very important in the high schools, and it was about finding one's calling and used a model of Ikigai, which is a Japanese concept of how you balance career. And I probably have the PowerPoint somewhere to share with you, but this young man, and then he worked with us, like all the faculty came together with him and he was asking us questions and we were all going, this is great,
Wow.
and it went over extremely well in the high schools.
That's awesome. There's such a platform to be able to speak not only in university campuses, but then in the high schools like that. For the professors who paired up with the Italian crew students and they went on campus, were they doing evangelism?
Yes, they were actively. It was kind of funny because Jonathan Gilmore was like, it's just about building relationships. He was just more relaxed about it.
Uh-huh.
But I know that this this couple, they're actually worship leaders in their church. So one of the things we did even when we first got to Palermo is they led worship with singing and music. And my thing was just to like advance the slides with someone else had created from Agape Italia had created all the songs with the English and the Italian together. So,
Yeah.
you know,
Every role's important, Kate.
yes, but it was so, so much fun
Mm,
to have that worship. And they're very strong and, and they made sure to share, they shared with many people and they went together on campus with the students and they felt really led to do that. And yeah, and I think that really forged the partnership between faculty and students in ways that is pretty.
definitely. You're going out together. What was a conversation of significance that the professor and student had, like with maybe a non-believing student?
I had one conversation, but it was more small. But it was this one student who I think had what was it, a Mandalorian? It was something, some kind of cool sci-fi shirt. I commented
Huh?
on it. As we talked, he had mentioned that he had been raised very strict religiously, Catholicism, and his belief, what he had been taught was that faith is you don't question anything, you just do what is told to you. And I kind of shared about how, an unexamined faith is not faith at all, that honestly to question and to think it through and to wrestle with it is true faith. We didn't get
Mm,
the time to, really we had to wrap up our talk, but all of, it was started with honestly, I really have to thank the Sojourners book. All I asked was like, "Where are you on your spiritual journey?" And his English was good enough that he understood what I was saying versus,
good.
"What is that? Are you talking about ghosts?"
Huh? Yeah, because that could be a foreign concept.
Yeah,
Listening. I bet that was really helpful to him. That's, I think, common for students and people out of school to maybe feel guilty having doubts, not feel comfortable asking tough questions. And it is important to be able to do that.
at the same time too, I think some of the things they faced, was a little harder because Italy is known as an old country because the young people are flocking away because the economy
Mm,
just isn't able to support them. So they go to other countries. And, talking with some classrooms of young men or even high schoolers, they just felt like their opportunities were really limited and that they couldn't have, quote, the American dream. And I certainly didn't want to say you can have the American dream, just to give Jonathan's goal, I think, is to give a sense of hope, to bring hope to the students, but hope
mm,
that's in something bigger than just one's future. And I mean, they're all thinking about their future, but that's, I think, the
mhm.
challenge. And so I feel like our work has just started there. We really are called to go back and continue.
I hope you can. Hope you can go back and many more faculty. And we have other trips like this in other countries that I've heard about and been able to go on some. So hopefully we'll have more and more opportunities for Christian faculty doing missions with students. So thanks
Absolutely.
for sharing that.
Of course.
All right, so I actually have a question for you from an American student, and her name is Caitlin. She's actually from your school. She's from University of Florida. So
Great.
take a listen to this question from Caitlin.
Hi, I'm Caitlin. I'm a sophomore at the University of Florida. And so my question to Christian professors is how science and religion aren't really a topic that most people believe like coexist at all. So I'm wondering how you approach this topic when you're in a profession that you're not really allowed to talk about religion that much.
Thank you, Caitlin, for this question. I greatly appreciate it because it's something that came up on our mission trip recently in Italy. And with two faculty, or, one who's a faculty member, one who works in a nonprofit who do research on cancer immunotherapy, and they're hard scientists. I'm what's called a soft social scientist. And with soft social science, there's actually room to explore faith and religion. So, for example, I look at youth resilience and positive youth development and what are called protective factors that determine someone who's faced hardship can do well in life and succeed. And one of those factors is actually spirituality, religion. So we are actually allowed to look at it and even talk about it, especially in family, youth, and community sciences. It's more of an open topic rather than a closed one. And especially when I teach undergraduates, they're very receptive to talking about faith and receptive to hearing my views on faith. At the same time, talking from the biology or the immunologists and pharmacologist faculty members or PhDs who came with me who were from UF, they integrate faith and science as, that God allows discovery, that actually, that the more someone learns about science, the more somebody learns about a phenomenon and makes discoveries to, for example, a vaccine that helps fight glioblastoma or brain cancer, like the work of Elias Sayer on the UF campus in the College of Medicine, those insights are enabled by a higher power. And that in some ways, the more we understand about those intricacies and that problems can be solved, it does say something about our minds being created. We're created in God's image and we can think in ways to problem solve and to understand the inner workings of the human body of God. So honestly, the more somebody as a scientist, knows, it might lead one to marvel more about God, creation, and higher power in order to do that. And I wouldn't answer it this as well as maybe the two PhDs from UF who came with me on this mission trip, but they were very, very open about that with the students in Italy when they shared their research and shared how faith really made a difference. Because in the hard sciences, it is a tougher call. But for me in the soft social sciences, it's still something that I can explore without, I guess, any kind of obstacles being put in my way. So thanks, Caitlin.
Yeah, I appreciate Caitlin's question too, because a lot of students, Christian students, will believe that if I love science and I wanted to work in science, that kind of career may be subpar to becoming a missionary or a pastor. So there's like these sacred full-time ministry, then everything else would be more of secular. Do you believe that's true?
I think that can happen, but I even see that happen within science because I know for me and also other faculty members who are believers, sometimes we might look at what a missionary does and want to do a lot more of that. And maybe at some point, the work and the discovery that we're doing could potentially suffer. I mean, God definitely saw me through a lot and helps me to balance out my time. But I think that's even a struggle, I think, for younger faculty members. And I've noticed it rather recently where they're like, I need to do my science work, but it's so much easier. I want to go out and maybe share this tract with somebody, and
Yeah.
have this spiritual conversation. And you can do that, but you can also be strong in your research and then have conversations that lead to God, even with fellow faculty members who don't see the same way that you do.
And I get the picture of discovery being glorifying to God because you're doing science, discovering what God has done, that there's a false separation there between secular and sacred. And a lot's been written about that. So hopefully, yeah,
Yeah,
more and more students can recognize they can glorify God however he has gifted them.
exactly. Yeah. And that could be curing cancer. I mean, that was one of the talks that
Yeah.
a person who went with us to Italy had also done this trip in Guatemala and even talked about the quest to cure cancer.
Wow.
But it started with a physician who really wanted to make a difference and was very tired of seeing, or it was wearying to see young children with brain cancer and then saying, well,
Yeah.
how about I go find the cure? So going from treating patients directly to the science of finding the cure.
Yeah. Jesus walked around and healed people continually. It was a high priority,
I wish
in
I could do a
ways
study of
doctors can
that
glorify him.
and see
I
how did
know.
that happen? What did that look like?
Well, yeah. We'll have
What
many
kind of
questions to
cells
ask
were in
him
the
someday.
blind man's eyes before and after he could see?
Right. Why make him mix mud? And why spit in the dirt? Wow. Okay, thank you for all of these thoughts. Do you have any advice for younger faculty who are Christians who would love to be more involved on their campus spiritually? Maybe take some bold steps of faith and don't know how. They're wanting to be able to influence students for Christ and are not sure what they're allowed to do or the best way to do that. Do you have any advice for
Sure.
them?
Yeah, that's a tough call because I'm at UF where it's been very strong. Nance and Howie have been here for over 20 years, and they built a ministry from the ground up, starting with, and Crew was already there for students, but the connection between that and then starting of grad Crew, everything's very established. And at other universities, there really isn't as much happening. So, for example, the student I mentioned who graduated and now is in Chile is just starting everything from the ground up. So,
Yeah.
honestly, if I wanted to give advice, it would be how she's done things, which was she actually has a director who's invested and says, "Oh, these are the faculty who are Christians you can reach out to and talk to." Actually,
Really?
I know. I mean, talk about
Yeah.
friendliness. So
Yeah.
yeah, so I think she would be a really excellent example of someone, who connected with students. And then she also found a fellow faculty member with the same goals as her. And so now her goal is more reaching to the other faculty members, whereas her fellow faculty member is working to sort of build a Crew ministry of students.
Oh, it's a
But
good partnership there.
that's grassroots. That's really grass.
Yeah.
Whereas we have it all already here.
Mm.
So I know a lot of people have said just sharing your faith, on the first day of class or in some way letting your students know who you are, where you stand, and then trying to work together. That's all we need.
Yeah, I would imagine some faculty who have an entrepreneurial spirit would say, hey, show me how I can launch something. But many faculty would be helped by having a partner, someone doing. Most of us do things better, at least in pairs. So, yeah, that's good advice.
And I had a lot of support from Nance and Howie. I mean, really,
Really.
their ministry has helped me and others to flourish.
Well, Kate, is there anything else that you would like to talk about?
No, I mean, thank you. Thank you for the prayer beforehand, because I prayed about it too. And I'm always surprised at what comes out, even though you gave me the whole everything outlined about where you might go and
Yeah.
but when you mentioned sharing stories, that I'm all about that.